أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين حمدا كثيرا طيبا مباركا فيه اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما صليت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد اللهم بارك على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما باركت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد أما بعد أهلا وسهلا ومرحبا بكم عساكم طيبون يا جماعة الخير أرحب بكم في هذه اللقاء المبارك. I welcome all of you to this blessed حلقة, this dars, where we are studying the matan of Khulasah, Tajdeed al-Ilm. And the first majlis, in terms of the actual principles, was last week. Alhamdulillah, we went through the first ma'aqid, al-ma'aqid al-awwal, and we learned over there that you need to cleanse and purify the vessel in which ilm resides, right? The vessel of ilm is the qalb, the heart. And we mentioned that there's two types of impurities or filth that we need to purify ourselves from, namely ash-shahawat and ash-shubuhat, right? Ash-shahawat wa shubuhat. There's a couple comments I want to make on that before we move on to the second ma'aqid. We have noticed that the Shaykh, he mentions that one of them is طهارته من نجاسة الشبهات وطهارته من نجاسة الشهوات. He mentions shubuhat first and then he mentions ash-shahawat, right? Doubts and then the desires, right? So he is obviously speaking about a Muslim who has Islam and Iman in his mind, in his heart, and for him to progress with knowledge, for him to be able to seek knowledge and acquire knowledge, his heart needs to be cleansed of the doubts, if he has any, right? So his doubts come first, as per what the Shaykh has mentioned, right? And of course, he has to also fight the shahawat, the desires that he may have. Right now, what comes first? What should we target first, right? Now, as per the understanding that we get from this order, is that shubha, doubt, comes first and then the shahawat. Because perhaps, and this is one perspective, that shubha is something that can take you outside the fold of Islam, right? If you have a doubt which is detrimental, destructive, it can take you outside the fold of Islam. So we need to deal with our doubts first, right? And then another perspective is that, well, doubts normally they occur because of some shahawat that we have. Or why do you not want to wear hijab? Or why do you not want to grow your beard? Why do you not want to pray your sunan? Oh, I feel tired, or I feel this and I feel that. So all sorts of excuses, right? All sorts of excuses. So perhaps the root cause of shubuhat are the shahawat, right? So we need to address those first. The reality is that there is no fixed time in which one occurs without the other, right? And there's no case scenario where one can exist without the other, right? Shahawat give birth to the shubuhat, right? And then shubuhat feed into shahawat. How? Well, you don't feel like praying because, well, you like playing games on the computer, whatever the case may be, right? Well, this shahwa, this desire of not wanting to pray, or let's say not wanting to grow a beard, or not wanting to dress modestly, whatever the case may be, right, leads you into Islam is so difficult. Islam is so, burdening. And then it leads you to the next stage, which is, I wonder, why Islam is so strict, right? So you start with a statement, as in, Islam is burdensome, and then you start with a question, which is, I wonder why Islam is so burdening, and why is it so hard, right? And then, perhaps there's something wrong with it, right? It can't truly, it can't be the case that something from Allah could be so difficult, right? It should be, as I wish, as per my liking, right? If it has to fit my, fancies, right? So shahwa feeds into shubha, shubha feeds into the shahwa. Now that's the reality, right? However, what is more destructive? Would you say shubuhat are more destructive, or do you think shahawat are more destructive? If you look at this, at the root of all of this, truly, there's only one pick that we can truly have at this stage. When you look at the roots of it, right? Shubha, as we've just looked at, comes much later. A doubt can only come once you've had a preconception, and then you doubt it, right? You need to have one set of belief first to be able to doubt it, right? You need to have a reality first, and then you doubt that reality. So in this hierarchy, you can see that shubha always comes first. Is everyone with me, inshallah? Right? So if you build this hierarchy, you understand that shahwa is the true reason or cause why people, one, they fail to seek knowledge if they're Muslims, or they fail to practice Islam, right? Or they leave Islam, or they don't enter Islam to begin with. So atheism, right? Atheism, agnosticism, a lack of distance from Islam, hatred for Islam, all of that really comes down to not that you have certain doubts, not that it's actually intellectual. It's rather to do with your fancies, things that you like or don't like. You want things to bend to your liking, right? In fact, some of the ulama, they've mentioned that one of the reasons why Islam has not spent so much time in the Quran, there's only one or two ayat that directly address the idea of the creation of the universe and everything, right? But in one or two simple arguments, that Allah has addressed this issue, and then He has given us the fitrah, and that fitrah is the mechanism through which you have no defense, left in your arsenal against Allah on the Day of Judgment to say, we had no idea how, that there was a God, or there was, He hadn't, and we had to worship Him, and so forth. Because Allah has put this in your fitrah that you have to worship something, right? And that Allah is one. So fitrah knows this. And not just that, right? The fitrah also knows that there are going to be prophets coming, right? The fitrah knows this, right? And the fitrah does not only know that, it also knows that there's a promise Allah took from you, which is that you will لَتُؤْمِنُنَّ بِهِ وَلَتَنْصُرُنَّ, that you will believe in those prophets when they come, those messengers when they come, and you will aid them, right? So the fitrah also knows that when the prophets come, you have to stand with them, and you have to make the sacrifices, even if it means that you sacrifice your own, right? So if all of that is in the fitrah, right, and then Allah on top of that has sent the messengers as proofs, and has sent the Quran as a miracle, as an everlasting miracle that you can test even till this day, then what really determines why you leave Islam or not accept Islam to begin with is the shahwa, right? So the ulama, they've written this, that the reason why Allah does not address atheism is because it's unnatural, right? And right at the heart of atheism, right, as Shaykh At-Turayfi mentions, is that there is a shahwa, there is an underlying shahwa, there is an underlying desire, a base desire, a whim that is stopping you, right? There is something that is filthy in your heart that prevents you from seeing the truth. Okay? So this is this kind of hierarchy we need to understand, right? So shahwa is much more dangerous than shubuhat, because shahwa leads to shubuhat, right? And then shubuhat lead to either ilhad, which is apostasy and whatnot, wal-a'yadhu billahi min dhalik, and all the rest of the corruptions. People, the reason why Muslims are, if they are Muslims at all, they are not practicing or they're weak in the world, is because they are acting on their shahwat. Okay, so when we look at it in the context of seeking knowledge, attaining knowledge, then you understand that shahwat can be more destructive than just shubuhat, right? You can have a shubha and then you suppress it with the aid of Allah and you move on, right? And then that side of things is done, right? It doesn't worry you too much. However, you may have a have a shahwa that you don't leave off, right? And subhanallah, over time it sort of compounds, and it ends up ends up towards you not just leaving Islam or not acting upon Islam, which is lesser than the first. However, it may lead you to becoming a da'i of su', right? A caller of falsehood, right? You may label yourself as a sheikh, you may label yourself as a da'i, you may label yourself as an allama, fallana, whatever alqab titles you may attach to your name, doctor, sheikh, doctor X, Y, and Z, right? Sheikh, doctor X, Y, and so and so. You may have all those titles, next to your name, but really, because the shahawat have compounded over time, it will lead to you being a caller of falsehood, a caller towards falsehood, right? Your da'wah is nothing but based on what? The shahawat, right? So it's going to misguide people. And then, of course, that's worse than just ridda. That's worse than just people leaving Islam. You leaving Islam, right? That shahawat that has compounded over time may lead to others apostatizing from Islam, right? Or leaving Islam, or becoming mulhideen, and so on and so forth, right? I hope that is clear, right? So it is very important. You can look at the ripple effect of these two things, shahwa and shubuhat, onto a person's life, right? So it's not just that it can destroy a productive academic career of a student, but may also just as well finish your entire career as a Muslim. It may just, these two things may just, very well entirely lead you to apostasy and, and worse still, becoming someone who misguides others. Subhanallah. Okay, so that's the first foundation. We need to, this is something that is going to be perpetual in our lives. Okay? This is something that's going to be perpetual. We have to be fighting the shubuhat and the shahawat for the rest of our lives. This is something that you can't, right? This is something that you can't think of not fighting or leaving to the side. These are the principles. They're called the ma'aqid for a reason, right? They're going to remain intact, and if you try and sort of detract from them, you're going to lose your way, right? So we have to be in a perpetual state of fighting these shahawat and then shubuhat. Okay. Yes. So a shahwa, naam, that's correct, mashallah. So shahwa is something that is your desire. It could be something to do with, or your base desires, like animalistic desires of eating a lot, or drinking a certain kind of soda, or dressing in a certain kind of way, or and it can go all the way to intellectual shahawat, like adopting a certain perception of the world, choosing to hang out with a certain group of people, choosing to believe in a set of beliefs, right? Just because you make sense to you. Right? So philosophy essentially is nothing but a collection of shahawat, essentially. That's what philosophy is. The study of philosophy is nothing but the study of shahawat of people, right? Which they claim to be intellectual, which they claim to be essentially knowledge and reason. Okay? Inshallah. So let's now jump into al-ma'aqid al-thani. Okay, al-ma'aqid al-thani. Now we need to spend some time on this, so let's see how much we can do in this lesson, and then we'll, if something's left, we'll carry on to tomorrow's lesson, inshallah. Subhanallah, right after the Shaykh has clarified the importance of, purifying our hearts of the filth, the very next thing that he's talking about right after that is ikhlasun niyyah. Okay? Ikhlasun niyyah is the sincerity of intention. Fihi, in the path of knowledge. Now you may question, does sincerity of intention come before the shahawat and the shubuhat? So cleansing our hearts of those shahawat and shubuhat? Or does the cleansing come first and then ikhlas? Right? And that will be a valid question, right? Likewise, as we said previously, is it that one leads to the other? So not just that which comes first, but is one interconnected with the other? Is ikhlas connected with the purification of the heart? And does purification of the heart lead to more ikhlas? Right? So it's not just that which one you do first, but rather, if they're connected, then you have to perpetually be involved in the development of both, right? But then, as we said previously as well, there's always something at the bottom of things, right? And of course, that is the niyyah, That is the intention. Okay? If a person today has doubts, and let's say he has lots and lots of shahawat, the worst kinds of shahawat that you can imagine, right? But a thought comes to mind, and he says, and the thought says, don't be a hypocrite. Be honest with yourself. Just that thought can ignite this search for sincerity, right? And wanting to be sincere and not be a hypocrite. But the thing is, what's the opposite of hypocrisy? It's to be honest with yourself, right? Be sincere means being honest with yourself. You're being true to yourself, right? And then, of course, I'll mention what ikhlas actually means in a second. But in a general sense, ikhlas is seeking sincerity, right? For Allah's sake alone, right? Being sincere for Allah Azza wa Jal. طيب. At the root of it, it has to be the intention, because that is the only thing that we can truly, on a mental level, register as the first thing. We might not register our doubts, we might not register our shahawat, but everyone can, at least when they sort of do this self-inspection or internalization of things, they realize that they can very easily realize whether they are being hypocrites or they're being sincere, whether they're being true to themselves or they're not, right? So ikhlas is the bottom, is the bottom line. It's the heart of things. This is the crux of the matter, right? So the more sincerity you have, i.e., the more this desire to be sincere and leave hypocrisy, the more it burns inside, the more you're going to want to cleanse yourself from any shahwa and the shubha, right? And inshallah, as the process starts, as you start cleansing your heart of your shahawat and the shubuhat, slowly but surely, that is going to, in effect, lead to a greater increase in your sincerity. Your sincerity and your truthfulness to Allah Azza wa Jal, it's going to polish over time, right? It's going to compound over time, right? To the point that you'll arrive at a point where you feel like you can sacrifice everything for the sake of Allah Azza wa Jal. In the beginning, that might not be the case, right? It might just start with this thought of, am I sincere? Am I truthful to myself, right? And then from that point all the way up to that you're willing to sacrifice, now you're willing to sacrifice everything, anything and everything for the sake of Allah Azza wa Jal, right? Including yourself, your life, your family, your wealth, everything, right? So ikhlas and its development comes in stages. And this is something, as with the purification of the heart from shahawat and shubuhat, this is deeply interconnected, the two things. And this is something that you're going to be in a constant state of war with for the rest of your life, right? And the Shaykh, he mentioned some anecdotes later on. We'll go through that in a second, inshallah. Okay, so subhanallah, I don't think personally for me, like there's been a single day in my life ever since I understood this issue, that I've questioned my sincerity behind things, right? Whether I'm doing something for Allah Azza wa Jal sincerely or not. There's always that. There's every single day I question myself, and I always have to sort of self-inspect, if I'm going in the right direction or not, right? And this is something that all the ulama, they do, and the Shaykh will mention that in a second, right? يقول إن إخلاص الأعمال أساس قبولها أو قبولها أو قبولها. It's written in both ways. Indeed, the ikhlas or the sincerity of actions is the foundation of its acceptance. How sincere your actions are, that sincerity is the foundation of how much acceptance it's going to get. So the greater the ikhlas, the greater the sincerity, the greater the acceptance with Allah Azza wa Jal. وَالسُّلَّمُ وُصُولِهَا. And it is the ladder of reaching ilm. وصولها أي وصولي إلى هذه النية. It's the ladder of its reaching the a'mal, right? Reaching the righteous actions. Okay, so the correct intentions is the ladder essentially that you sort of climb on to get to the righteous action and its acceptance. Okay, قال تعالى وما أمروا إلا ليعبدوا الله مخلصين له الدين حنفاء. وما أمروا, and they were not commanded, إلا, except, with what? ليعبدوا الله, that they may worship Allah. How do they worship Allah? By associating partners with Him at the same time. Worship Allah, ala harf, worshipping Him one day and leaving Him the other day, perhaps. Or worshipping Him, in part, and leaving the rest of His obligations and commands. Right? No. مخلصين له الدين. مخلصين, ay adopting ikhlas, right? Becoming mukhlis for his deen. Okay, so more technically, the ayah says that they make their deen khalis for him. They make their deen, they make their religion sincere for him. Okay, how do they worship Allah? They worship Allah in a state of purifying their deen for Allah Azza wa Jal, making their deen sincere for Allah alone. Lahu. Mukhlisina lahu ad-deen. The word lahu is before ad-deen, right? Otherwise, the general structure would have been mukhlisina ad-deena liman lahu, right? Making sincere the deen for who? For Allah, lahu, right? For Him. But Allah says lahu ad-deen. He mentions lahu first and then ad-deen, right? Because it is for Him alone that they make this religion sincere, and that their truthfulness is only towards Allah Azza wa Jal when it comes to this religion. Okay, so they have not been commanded except with this quality of iman, that they worship Allah. Right? This tawheed essentially comes down to not just belief. Belief is in the fitrah. Right? The evidences for believing in one God, one Creator, one Rabb, all of that is apparent. It's like the as the Shaykh mentioned, it's like the shining radiant sun in the middle of the day, right? Believing in God, just believing that He's your Rabb, this is something that does not need arguments, that does not need any proofs. It's self-apparent, right? It's self-evident. But وَمَا أُمِرُوا إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُوا اللَّهَ, right? They have not been commanded except to worship Allah. Okay? So worship is the essence of Tawheed. Okay? Worship is the essence of Tawheed. If you do not have the worship of Allah Azza wa Jal, you can claim to believe in Him all you want. You can claim that you believe in all of His names and attributes. You can claim that you love Him, you are willing to sacrifice your life for Him. But if you don't do ibadah, if you don't worship Allah, then this is not something that Allah commanded you with, and your tawheed is batil. Your iman is batil, right? You have wasted your life, and you will be put with the residents of the hellfire, خالدين فيها. You will always reside in it. You will never be taken out of the hellfire, right? If you don't actualize the commandment, which is ibadah. وَمَا أُمِرُوا إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُوا اللَّهَ مُخْلِصِينَ لَهُ الدِّينَ. Now, you're commanded, they were not commanded except with ibadah. This is the usloob of al-hasr, which basically means that they were not commanded with anything except ibadah of Allah Azza wa Jal. They were not commanded except with tawheed al-ibadah or tawheed al-uluhiyya. Right? This is the essence of tawheed. Whenever ibadah is mentioned, it refers to tawheed al-uluhiyya essentially, right? So believing in Allah Azza wa Jal, all of that essentially comes down to worshipping Him. Right? You can't claim to believe in Allah and not worship. طيب? So, how do you worship Him now? First of all, you do kufr in taghut. Okay? فَمَن يَكْفُرْ بِالطَّاغُوتِ وَيُؤْمِن بِاللَّهِ فَقَدْ اسْتَمْسَكَ بِالْعُرْوَةِ الْوُثْقَى لَا انْفِصَامَ لَهَا وَاللَّهُ سَمِيعٌ عَلِيمٌ. Right? Whoever renounces taghut, anything that is against Allah, that is opposing Allah Azza wa Jal, or that is against Islam, that is an enemy to Islam, right? Starting from shaitan, his followers, everyone who comes in the way of Islam is a taghut. So you have to reject it, right? That's the first principle of tawheed, right? So you do what? You do ikhlas. So basically, for you to be able to be a Muslim, for you to remain a Muslim, for you to be able to achieve the purpose of your life, you have to worship Allah Azza wa Jal, and in that worship, You have to be what? مُخْلِصِينَ لَهُ الدِّينَ حُنَفَاء. You have to be hunafa. Okay? I'll explain the word hunafa or hanif in a second. But let me summarize this once more. That ibadah is the crux of tawheed. Okay? Ibadah is the crux of tawheed. And ibadah does not actualize unless and until and after you have already denounced a taghut. Taghut, or any false idols, any false gods, any false beliefs, any false systems, any false laws, anything that is against the Sharia or Allah, right, in line with what Shaitan wants the believers to do, all of that is taghut. You have to renounce and denounce all of that, right? You have to. Otherwise, your ibadah is not going to be accepted, right? So if that's the only thing you've been commanded with, if that's the only thing that is the purpose of your worship, well, in that case, you will have failed your worship. You will have failed the purpose of your life, right? That's in summary. Now, how do you worship Allah Azza wa Jal? مُخْلِصِينَ لَهُ الدِّينَ. So this is the essentially the explanation of what, as I said, فَمَن يَكْفُرْ بِالطَّاغُوتِ. You have to do kufr in taghut. You have to deny and denounce taghut. How to do that? Well, you have to do ikhlas. Ikhlas is from akhlasa, yukhlisu ikhlas. Akhlasa means to make something khalis. Khalis is something pure. So the action of making something pure, right? And ikhlas means the purification, the act of purification. طيب? So become mukhlisin. Do ibadah in a state in which you are mukhlisin, i.e. in an active, perpetual state of making the deen pure, making the religion pure, right? Inshallah. So this is how you worship. You worship Allah. You've already done the kufr with taghut. You've renounced all the taghut, inshallah. And now, as a perpetual state, you are in a constant battle with yourself, with your nafs, with the shayateen of the world, from the ins, from the jinn, to purify the religion for Allah's sake and His sake alone. Okay? His sake alone. واضح inshallah? مُخْلِصِينَ لَهُ الدِّينَ. Okay? And making this religion sincere for only His sake. Now, Hunafa. Hunafa is the second adjective or the second description of who these mukhlisin are. Okay, essentially the second hal from the wow, i.e. you worship Allah in a state of one, mukhlisin lahuddin, that you are in a perpetual state of purifying the deen of Allah Azza wa Jal and for His sake alone. And secondly, you worship Allah as hunafa. You worship Allah Azza wa Jal as hunafa. Right? Yes, you may ask questions, inshallah. Let me just wrap this up, bidhni ta'ala. Any questions, we'll welcome them in a few minutes, okay? So, you have to worship Allah, one, as mukhlisina lahuddin. You have to be in a perpetual, constant state of purifying the religion for Him and His sake alone. Secondly, you worship Allah as hunafa, as hanif. What's the example, the archetype of hanif that comes to mind when we hear the word hanif? When we hear the word hanif, then the Nabiullah Ibrahim, Khalilullah Ibrahim alayhi salam, right? And he's a hanif. What is a hanif? Hanif in the lugha is something who is ma'il. Ma'il means someone who is bent towards a direction, okay? Bent towards a direction, inshallah. Tamam? So, in the lugha, when something is ma'il, he is munharif, right? He is essentially munharif, which basically means that he is bent, right? One of the famous Sahaba, he was known as Ahnaf. His name was Ahnaf. The reason why he was called Ahnaf, why his name was Ahnaf, was when he used to walk, lopsided, right? He would walk with a little bent to his radiyallahu anh, right? So his name was Ahnaf. They used to call him Ahnaf because he was essentially, he used to lean towards a side when he used to walk, okay? Now, when you do inhiraf, or you do become a hanif, essentially, from something which is munharif, which is something that should be denounced and left, then what is the opposite of that? When you do inhiraf, when you turn away from something that deserves to be turned away from, then you turn away towards something which is in the middle, which is something which is just, something which is objectively correct and truth, right? So when the word hanif is used for Ibrahim alayhi salam, it means that he was munharif from shirk. Okay? He had leaned towards tawheed. He had turned away from a shirk. Okay? inshaAllah. So he was bent towards Tawheed and bent away from Ashirk. So Hanif is the word that we're looking for, and Hunafa is a plural of Hanif. طيب. Now, subhanAllah, if this is something that you've been commanded with, and if this is something that is the purpose of your life as Muslims, then this maqid, the second principle of knowledge, is not just the second principle of knowledge. It's the second principle of your iman, right? Rather, it's a foundation of iman, right? It's the foundation of iman. إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالنِّيَّاتِ, or إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالنِّيَّةِ, as it says in one hadith, inshaAllah, right? So, inshaAllah, we'll explore this topic of ikhlas in a few more lessons, because this is something very, very important, and we want to spend enough time on this so that it sinks in deeply with everyone, that this is something that is going to be a constant issue in your lives. As Tulab al-Ilm, as Muslims, bi'idhni ta'ala, you're going to be fighting shahwat, you're going to be fighting doubts and desires and all sorts of things that you might not even recognize initially. But over time, when you increase in sincerity, you start realizing that, oh, I have this deep flaw in my heart. I need to fix it. I need to rectify my intention. I need to improve my sincerity, right? I need to be more truthful to Allah Azza wa Jal. I need to be more open and sincere to myself, and so on and so forth, right? So this topic is very important, inshaAllah. If there's any questions, let me have your questions now, inshallah. We'll wrap it up with this hadith. وفي الصحيحين عن عمر رضي الله عنه أن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم قال الأعمال بالنية ولكل امرئ ما نوى. In the hadith of Umar رضي الله عنه, in the Sahihain, Bukhari, Muslim, the Messenger of Allah صلى الله عليه وسلم, he said, all the actions are based on intentions, and for every man or woman, every person is what he has intended, inshaAllah. So we'll comment on this hadith in more detail tomorrow, inshaAllah. And of course, this particular hadith is going to be discussed in much more detail when we start studying the 40 hadith of Imam Nawawi. Okay, it's the first hadith, right? So we're going to be studying this in much more detail over there as well. This is something that's going to come again and again, so don't worry. Is it possible for a person to achieve complete sincerity, whether in one action or in all of them? There is no such thing as complete sincerity. A person, because he is created in a state of weakness, right? And he's created with certain characteristics, there is never going to be a state of complete perfection and complete sincerity. Only the Anbiya can lay a claim to complete sincerity for Allah Azza wa Jal. Right? So there's no such thing as complete sincerity. This is something that we're going to be fighting for the rest of our lives. There is no such thing as you thinking, oh, I've achieved complete sincerity. The moment that you think, and the Shaykh is actually going to address this, it's coming in a few lines underneath, inshallah. Right? It's coming, right? So it will be mentioned later in a dars as well, right? But that's the first thing. There's no such thing as complete sincerity, as far as we are aware. Okay? So you always have to doubt your sincerity. You always have to question your sincerity and be able and keep, inshallah, improving yourself. Okay? So that's the general sincerity. Okay? Secondly, can you be sincere in one action or in all of them? Sincerity is essentially is general in a sense. It has to be general, because a general sincerity that you're going to be truthful to yourself and in whatever you do, right, will lead you to be sincere in in individual activities, right? For example, it's true that you may be sincere with your family, but you may not be sincere with others, right? So you may be sincere in one thing but not the other things. It's true, right? But if you live a life of constant accountability and you ask yourself and you question, am I sincere, generally speaking, with Allah Azza wa Jal and His Deen, then that sincerity will reflect in all the other realms of life, inshaAllah, right? But it's true that people generally are, mostly because of natural reasons, they're more sincere towards some things than the others. For example, you have a family, you may be sincere towards your family and wanting best for them, but it might not mean that you're sincere towards others the same way. However, the Islam that we believe in, the religion that we believe in, it says ad-dinu nasiha, right? The whole of this religion is sincere advice. So you have to be sincere and wanting khair for others, right? And the Prophet, he said, لا يؤمن أحدكم حتى يحب لأخيه ما يحب لنفسه. You will not, one of you will not believe, right? Truly believe, be a mu'min, right? Unless he loves for his brother or he loves for himself, right? So all of these hadith, they point to the same thing, that There are natural lapses in a human psyche, its creation, which will necessarily mean that you are naturally sincere in some things by default and not sincere in the others. But if you can, inshallah, peg your sincerity in Iman, in Allah, in His Deen, then inshallah, and you can work on your general sincerity towards Allah and His Deen and the Muslims and Islam, and that will reflect, inshallah, in other realms of life. Any other questions before we move on to our Arabic session, bi-idhnillahi ta'ala? Any other questions quickly? I think one other student mentioned they have questions. Any other questions quickly? طيب, alhamdulillah. If there are no questions, then we will call it a day here with this lesson, inshallah, and we'll jump into our Arabic session, and we'll resume from here, this point onwards, from so tomorrow, inshallah. Okay? Barakallahu feekum. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.